Hey guys, so we are going to be talking about a new genre in reading this week, and it's poetry. I know you have all learned about poetry in previous grades, and some of you may really love poetry, and some of you, it may not be your favorite. But as a fourth grader, you do need to know about reading poems and some of the elements that make a poem different than other types of genres. So today, what we're going to be doing is you're going to be taking notes in your reader's notebook on the elements of poetry and the types of poems that you as a fourth grader need to know to be successful, and also so you know it for fifth grade and years later on. So what I need you to do right now is I need you to go and get your reader's notebook out of your backpack. You're also going to need a pen or pencil. I'll give you some time to do that. All right, now that you have your materials, again, reader's notebook and a pen or pencil, I want you to open up to the page with plot on it. After you have that, I want you to skip this back page. I have it right here. And then I want you to go to the next clean page. We're first going to start by taking notes on the elements of poems. So things that make poems different than other genres, like I said earlier. So I want you to write the word poetry at the top of your page, poetry. And then you're going to underline that. Ooh. Then you're going to draw a line about halfway down. And then you're going to have to split your page into 3 chunks. So you're going to count first 9 lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. You're going to draw a line there. And then you're going to count 8 lines, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And you're going to draw a line there. So you have 6 sections total. All right, the first element of poetry that we're going to talk about is one that you're all probably really familiar with, is rhyme. Okay. And rhyme is when words have the same ending sound. Now, typically, rhyme in fourth grade poems is going to happen at the end of the lines in a poem. All right, the next one, next element of poetry we're going to talk about is meter. Meter. Meter is the rhythm or beat in a lyrical poem. All right, so whenever you're reading a poem and it feels like there's an up, down, or stress sound or unstressed sound, and you can kind of clap your hands along with it, then that is an example of meter. All right, the next one, so we're now here, is stanza. Stanza. What a stanza is, it's a division in the poem made up of 2 or more lines. So what I like to call stanzas is the paragraphs of poetry. So whenever you have a big space in between a group of lines, that's a stanza break. And so we're going to look at some examples of that tomorrow. The next one is line break. Line break. And this is the end of a line in a stanza. So in poetry, we don't typically have sentences because punctuation doesn't have to be used. So instead of saying, well, the sentence ends here, we say, well, there's a line break here. And you can really put a line break anywhere in a poem. That's up to the poet's choice. And again, we're going to look at some of those examples tomorrow. We then have repetition. Repetition. And these are words or phrases that are repeated on purpose. So you'll see this a lot of times in poems where one whole line will be repeated several times, or maybe a word will be repeated several times, maybe because that's what the poem is about, or the poet just really wants to emphasize what that one word or phrase. All right, and the last one element of poetry is sensory language. Sensory language. And this is how the author uses words to add specific details to a poem. And so anytime where the author is describing what something smells like, looks like, tastes like, that's sensory language, and poets will use this a lot of times to really paint a picture with their poem. So again, these are our 6 main elements of poetry that as a 4th grader you need to know. We're going to be looking at a few of these examples and poems this week and next week. All right, now that we have talked about the 6 different elements of poetry that you need to know about as a 4th grader, we're now going to talk about the different types of poems that 4th graders need to know about. So I want you to turn the page. Do not use the page behind your poetry elements. I want you to actually use the next page over, and we're actually going to turn our notebooks this way. So if you notice, I turned it from normal how we would write it to, so now that the crease is at the top. All right, you're then going to split your page in half. It's okay if it's not perfect. You're then going to be splitting your page up into 4 different sections or 4 columns. So I'm going to count 6 lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I want you to draw a line down. Count 6 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Actually, let's do 7. Count 6 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We're going to do 7 again. All right. It's about close enough. So again, that was 6 lines, 7 lines, 7 lines, and then whatever you have left over. All right, so our top column are the 4 most important poems that a 4th grader has to know of. These are the 4 poems that have a higher probability of showing up on assessments and the STAR test. So the very first one we're going to talk about is a free verse poem. All right, I'm going to scoot that over. I'm going to zoom in for you. Free verse. Okay, free verse poems can or cannot rhyme. No, they have no set pattern. And they sound like someone talking. All right, these poems really don't have a pattern. So if a poem cannot fit into any other style, it's going to be a free verse poem. All right, the next type of poem is lyrical. A lyrical poem has rhyme, has a meter, and sounds like a song. So again, going back to the word, it's lyrical, like the word lyrics that you would see in choir or in song lyrics. And so these poems do sound like a song. They're going to have rhyme. They're going to have that up, down feeling, the meter. And then, so a tip is they sound like a song, just like lyrics do. All right, the next really important poem type you need to know about is narrative. Okay. Narrative poems can or cannot rhyme. And here's the really big one. Narrative poems tell a story. I'm going to put will have characters. So these narrative poems, going back to kind of how I said for the lyrical, narrative, okay, well, think about in a story, there's sometimes is a narrator. Well, it's the same root word, narrator and narrative poems. So a narrative poem is going to tell a story. There's going to be a character in there. There's going to be kind of a plot that you can see. There will be a beginning, middle, and end to the poem. All right. They also can or cannot rhyme. It just kind of depends on what the poet decides. All right, and the last really big important poem that a fourth grader needs to know about is called a haiku poem. Haiku. Now, a haiku poem, these are Japanese poems. There's no rhyme in these poems. And it has a set pattern. And that set pattern is the first line has 5 syllables. The second line has 7 syllables. And the third line has 5 syllables. So this poem only has 3 lines in it. If it has more than 30 lines, it is not a haiku. And we're going to work on more haikus later on in writing. But right now, we'll just talk about that it does have a set pattern. All right, so the next 4 poems we're going to talk about, they're also important for fourth graders to know, but they show up less than the top 4. So the first one is one that you guys have all probably written before. These are acrostic poems. This poem has a set pattern. And it uses the letters of the topic to begin. Oh, not to begin. Uses the letters of the topic to use in each line. So, like I said, I know you guys have all written acrostic poem before. That's where if the topic is cats, it would be C-A-T, and then each line would be about cats. And like I said, for haikus, we're going to look at acrostic poems in writing later next week. The next poem we're going to talk about is a shape poem. These poems are poems that describe an object or activity. Describe an object or activity. And they also are in the shape of the topic. So if my poem is about basketball, then the poem would be shaped to look like a basketball. If my poem was about trees, the lines might be broken up and have different line breaks to make the poem look like a tree. All right, my next one is called a quatrain. Now, okay, like quintuplets, they have the same root word. When you have quintuplets, that means there are 4 children born at the same time. So that means a quatrain, if it has the same root word, means it's a poem that has 4 lines, only 4 lines. If it has more than 4 lines, it's not a quatrain. And it has a set rhyme pattern. And then the last one, and it kind of relates to quatrain, is called a cinquain poem. Now, if you've ever been to or if you've ever heard of Cinco de Mayo, cinco is 5 in Spanish, and so cinquain poems have 5 lines. And so if they have any more than 5 lines, it's not considered a cinquain poem. Cinquain poems tell a story. And they also has a set rhyme, rhyme pattern. All right, so as you can see, these are the 8 types of poems that 4th graders need to know. Again, the top 4, free verse, lyrical, narrative, and haikus, are the ones that are more likely to show up on assessments and where you'll be tested on. The bottom 4, acrostic, shape, quatrain, and cinquain poems, are still really important for you to know about, but they're going to show up less likely. Later this week, we're going to be identifying poems and using this chart to help us figure out which type of poem is the poem we're reading. All right, great job today, guys. You can now go put your reader's notebook back in your backpack. Please keep working hard during hybrid time, and I'm really proud of you guys. All right, later.